Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to review the Grumbacher Deluxe Opaque Watercolor set. Now this is a set of 24. Recently I did a video with the select transparent watercolors, and I wasn't that impressed with the transparent watercolors. I thought that they were kind of low pigmented. It took a lot of work to get them out of the pans. You could still produce a nice painting with them. They just didn't feel like they were that high of quality, and they felt kind of like children's tempera paint cakes to me. So I wasn't really expecting to enjoy the opaque watercolors, especially since I particularly don't care for opaque watercolors generally, but the pigment strength in these paints were so much nicer than their transparent paints, and they just felt like they were much higher quality. So what you get in this set is 24 of these colors, including a gold and silver, which you can see there on the ends. I haven't seen much cracking on these paints. I saw a lot of cracking on the watercolor paints, and in addition to the 24 colors, you actually get a little tube of white, which is really nice because a lot of times the white cakes of color don't really release that much. It's hard to get a really opaque coverage, and this gives you a nice opaque white. Then you can just squirt out what you need and use it as thickly as you like. So so there's that. We're going to use that today in our demonstration, and kind of show you the shimmeriness of the metallic. It's not super duper shimmery, but I didn't put a really thick layer either, so you know, it could just be that you need to use it a little thicker. But I think this would be really nice for maybe rubber stampers, or you know, if you want kind of a portable kit with quite a bit of product in it. It does seem like it's a good value for that. It's the same price as the transparent watercolors. You know, you can get it in 12 or 24 sets, but I did find the quality of the opaque one just to be nicer than the transparent, which usually isn't the case that I find. So what we're going to do today, because I got a request for it, is we're going to paint a Columbine, and I'm using a photo by Carrie Lynn Michon as a reference, and I'll put a link to that in the video description. And I'm going to show you some of the different techniques that we can do with these paints. And I'm going to begin, and this is a junky old brush. I don't know why that's in my water. This is an acrylic brush, but it's in my watercolor thing. Look at that. That's what happens when you leave your brushes in the water overnight. The wood swells and then all your paint flakes off. So word to the wise, don't do that. I'm just going to wet the background, and I'm not really going to go over the flower if I can help it too much, because I just want to kind of do a very quick painting study here. I can go over the stems though. I just don't want to go over those pretty purple Columbine flowers. And I'm gonna get in closer with my smaller brush. So, and that's interesting. If you're like an acrylic painter and you've wanted to try watercolors, you can use your acrylic brushes for watercolor. Although I would not recommend, if you're a watercolorist and you want to try acrylics, that you use your watercolor brushes for acrylics. Acrylics are very tough on brushes. You're not going to hurt your acrylic brushes with watercolor, but you will hurt your watercolor brushes with acrylic. So just keep that in mind if you've been thinking about dabbling in some of the other mediums out there. Now I'm working on a 140-pound watercolor card by Strathmore. I love those things. They're very handy to have, and then when you're done you can mail off your painting. I really like that idea for beginners, because sometimes, you know, you grow so much and then you might look at an old painting and be like, oh, I'm gonna throw that away. But you know what, it's probably just a fine painting. You're just too critical of yourself. So that way, if you just make it and you send it off, then you don't have to think about it again, and somebody else gets to enjoy your artwork. Now, in these big puddles that I have down there, I'm actually going to just set a corner of a paper towel in that and soak some of that up, because that's just a little too juicy. Alright, so now we'll do a background. I'm going to use some, I really like yellow ochre, so we'll try the yellow ochre on this kit out. I have my paper clipped to a board so I can kind of tip it. Now, the thing I liked about this that I didn't like about the other one so much is that this color really seems to flow, even though it's an opaque color. And a lot of times the opaque watercolors seem to just be, they feel like children's paints because they feel like they have so much filler in them, like there's not enough pigment and they won't flow on your paper. Like the transparent ones I didn't think flowed that well, and these are flowing very well, which is something that you don't see with low quality opaque watercolors. And just to be clear, I'm not being paid to do this. I did actually receive these paints for free because I was auditioning some different things to use in a class, and they didn't end up meeting my needs for what I needed, but I thought it might be kind of fun to review these in case anybody has been interested. So I didn't use a lot of paint there, and it's flowing really well, and I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to try some of this green here. I think it's probably like a permanent green light. It doesn't look earthy enough to be a sap green, but it's mixing nicely with my yellow ochre. I like it. it's a little much on its own. It's nice when I mix it in with the yellow ochre though. And since there's a lot of pigment, I feel, and I don't know what pigment they're using. I don't know if they're single. I don't know much about them. But I like that I don't have to use a lot, and if I don't use a lot, they're very transparent. Or not very transparent, but I'm certainly seeing the paper through. So kind of just to give you an idea there. And I do want to kind of go and make sure I don't leave any really big lumps around. Now these will dry lighter because they are a watercolor. I think I'll mix some of that out right on my palette because I don't see how bright that is on its own. That's a little much for what I'm doing here. I'll grab the yellow ochre. And again, these don't release quite as easily as, you know, my favorite transparent watercolors, but they're an opaque watercolor, so that's probably par for the course. They're kind of like a tempera. But they just feel nicer than like a children's tempera. Now, I don't think these are terribly cheap. I think that this set that I'm using here retails for like 47 bucks or something. So, you know, it's not super cheap. Just want to put that out there in case you fall in love with it and you go and see the price and are horrified. Now, if I don't want to have any blooms, I'll want to make sure that I either blot any puddles up with a paper towel or I blot it up with a dry brush. These colors lift really well, which is typical of opaque colors because they're opaque because they sit on top of the surface of the paper instead of absorbing in. And that's kind of what gives it that opaque look. So they're going to lift easier. So if you're a beginner and you're feeling like you want a little more coverage and you want to be able to fix your mistakes a little bit better, then this could be the thing for you. Now I do want to put some kind of fuzzy flowers in the back, and I'm going to do that just by grabbing some of the pink and just flicking it in there. Oh, telephone, hang on a second. Well, that just threw me off my total train of thought, and there was nobody there on the phone anyway. They had hung up by the time I got there. So I'm just gonna flick on some of those colors. Oh, and if you do find that your color, no matter what brand you're using, if you find that you're not getting your colors very easily out of your paints, you can spray them with water ahead of time, let them sit like 5 minutes before you go to paint, and that will really help them loosen up. And I just think this gives it a fun texture, so I'm just doing that with any of the colors that I've already used. Just flicking the color on. And I am just going to blot anything that looks muddy, or any place I want it a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to dry it just to save a little time, but you could walk away and have a cup of tea if that's your preference. I'll pause it while I dry it and we'll come back and finish it up. Okay, that only took a couple seconds with my heat gun, and we're going to start painting this. And I'm going to start actually by doing the center stamens with some nice bright yellow here. And part of the reason I want to do that, and I just flicked some water on there by mistake, so I'll blot that off. The reason I want to do that is just so I don't forget about it and end up having having color where I don't want it. Now, remember I said they're opaque? Look at this. They're not really that opaque because I'm going over pencil lines with this yellow, and I can clearly still see those pencil lines. So they're not as opaque as you would think. They're not really that opaque. They're not as opaque as like a tube gouache. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now I'm gonna go around and work on these outer petals, and I'm gonna do a technique I like to do with watercolor. And I'm just gonna wet the petal here. I want it to be oh, look at this. Kind of where I got some paint in there, that green, I can grate up to that and I can completely reshape that petal if I want to. So see what I mean about beginners, it being kind of good, you know, if you want to paint maybe more spontaneously, or maybe you don't want to draw first, or maybe you're a beginner and you're afraid of making a mistake, you can lift that right up. That came right up. Now I'm going to go in with this magenta color. Oh, the nice thing to notice about these is they are labeled. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but because it's just like a engraving kind of in the plastic, it is labeled. And actually this set did come with a brush, but I didn't care for it, so I'm not using that. But it does come with like a little soft paintbrush. There, I just heard kids come in. I'm going to do this petal and then I'm going to go greet my children, and then we'll be back. I don't know how many children, because when the phone rang it was probably somebody saying that they had to stay for practice. So hold on one second. Okay, I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit there. Children safely off the bus. And this is like, doesn't it feel like it's one of the vintage Lindsay videos, you know? Back when I didn't edit anything. Good times. Alright, so I am wetting this, and I'm going to do this for each of these outlying petals, adding in the magenta. You can really get some transparent effects with these. Kind of makes me wonder if maybe they get the products labeled, but I don't think so. I just don't see these being very opaque on any surface. I think that it would be kind of misleading. And maybe we'll grab a piece of black paper or something before we're done, and we'll compare it and see if any of these colors stand up on black. Maybe some of the lighter ones will, some of the earth tones. Now I will say though, like if I was using one of my artist grade tube paints, they would definitely be flowing more in a situation like this where I've wet the petal and added the colors. These definitely don't want to move as much, so like a set like this might be better for someone who's doing like rubber stamping or doing miniatures or something where they don't want to have their paints flowing too far in any direction. So, you know, I always think that, you know, the best product for me isn't necessarily going to be the best product for you. Everybody has their own goals when they're painting and their own reasons. There we go. And I feel like these have pretty good pigment strength, but I don't feel like I'm getting the color built up as deeply as I want. But then again, I'm not mixing colors. I'm kind of grabbing them from the pans just to kind of see what their pre-mixed colors are looking like. Let's see if we can get that a little bit darker with maybe a little bit of the ultramarine blue here. Mix that over there. Take a little bit of that purple. Yeah, it does look a little more chalky on the palette, doesn't it? It doesn't look as transparent. It doesn't want to beat up. It's definitely a little more viscous. So we'll mix that. Let's see what we get for a nice dark there. Let's see how that looks on our painting here. So we'll add a little bit of that on the tip and see. That's very blue. Let's go over here, add a little bit of that up here, and then add our other colors in. Like we do it to one petal though, you got to do it to the others. So just go in and work that in. And purple. A lot of sorts painting downstairs today. I've been working upstairs all winter because it's been cold down here. I got my palette on the wrong side. Phone's ringing. Furnace comes on. It's a madhouse. What can I say? Get that little tip in there. I don't think I think doing backgrounds with these would be nice. I don't think I really like the painting so much with these though. I have to say, I think if I was doing like a background for a scrapbook page or art journal or something, they would be fine and dandy, but not keen on them just doing a painting. I feel kind of restricted. So I don't know. Have you guys used these? Has anybody out there used them? Let me know in the comments. I'd be really curious to hear what you think. This will probably be one of the sets I end up giving to the kids. I'm letting them play with, or using in my classes. You know, if somebody doesn't have materials, and that's what I do. A lot of the stuff that I review that doesn't quite make the cut, I use in my classes, and it's just like, you know, my kids' classes or my beginner classes, or have it on hand in case somebody forgets their stuff. You know, because if I was doing like an art journal course where you're not really painting, you're just kind of doing a background, it would be absolutely fine. And I also want to get these little, get some paint in these little buds over here, pretty loosely. Zoom out a bit, we're getting a little too close and personal here. Get our paints better arranged so you can see them. And I'm going to go in and do the little stems and leaves. I'm going to keep it pretty loose though. I'm not really liking the control that I have with this paint, even though it's like the paint's not moving so much. I still don't feel like I have the control I want. Darken that up with a little bit of the ultramarine blue since I've already used it. It seems to flow really well if your paper's really wet, but I do notice if your paper's dry, it does kind of want to just sit there more than more than be kind of lively. This description probably makes no sense to anybody. And the buds kind of have that sheath of leaf or something around it. They're not really bright, so I'm just letting that green go up there. I do need to darken the stems. They're a little bit more red, but I don't want to grab a different red that I haven't used yet. I'm just going to use that magenta right in there on that stem color to get it where I need it to be. I don't want to add a whole new color at this point because then it's going to look a little strange. A little stranger, I should say. And I think I feel like I need, like, I'm just not happy with like the transition from the background to the foreground. So before I go and dry that so I can finish painting the flower, I'm just going to flick in some of the background colors again, because this is just not working. And I find that flicking paint is one of the best ways to disguise the fact that you don't know what you're doing when you're working with something. It's like, this isn't working, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll flick some paint and it'll be perfect. It's just a little trick of the trade, friends. Just a little trick of the trade. These can be just suggested little flowers in the background. I'm a little overboard there. That's alright. We'll blot it. Okay. I'm going to dry this and we'll come back and finish up the center of the flower. Okay, I feel like the center of this flower, those little petals in there are way more blue. So I'm going to actually go in here with my brush. I'm kind of resculpting out the petals because I really lost their shape in here. I guess I wasn't paying very much attention when I painted the outer petals. And I'm going to see, I lost a petal over here. So see, I can lift up this paint pretty darn easily. I'm going to blot that off just to remove some of that pink, but I just need to get back there. This brush, I'm noticing, I really tend to get a lot of beads of water on it. I don't know if it's because it's got the comfort grip handle or what, but I've been getting a lot of beads of color. You can see I'm lifting that green right off of that petal, getting those colors right out of there so I can go in with my other colors. And I want them to be a little bit bluer, so I've taken the ultramarine blue and some of that purple and mixed it together so I don't have such a purple, and I'm going to go in and just drip that into those damp petals so that that color can spread around a bit, and we can get those petals looking a little bit different than the petals that are on the outside. A little bit bluer. These other colors are Columbine, and some have like really skinny petals on the back. They're all a little different. I'm going to go in a little bit stronger of that blue here because where I was on top of another petal, I feel like I just need that little extra punch of color. Now I do need some deeper color down at the center of these, and I'm just going to go in and paint that right on and let it kind of fade up into the middle of those petals. And pretty much that will do it for this. I'm going to dry it and we'll come back and see it all done, all dry. Okay, the card is dry. I did go in and add just a few little accent kind of shading lines in there. All in all, I'm not that impressed with my painting, but I think that if you're somebody that wants to do backgrounds, you want to inexpensive, well, yeah, I wouldn't call it inexpensive. I think it's kind of expensive for what it is, quite frankly. But, you know, it's very liftable. Like, I lifted out some of the colors on these petals in the front there because they were just too dark. They weren't showing up against the outer petals, so that's good because you can lift back up. There are some kind of there's like a peach and there's some browns that you could mix some skin tones with, and I found the colors mixed really well and the colors were pretty vibrant. It wouldn't be my first pick for watercolors, opaque or otherwise. I probably would recommend the Gansey Tambi watercolors over these if you wanted a more opaque watercolor set, but you know, it's definitely usable. Definitely, you know, if you have this, definitely use it. It's not going to hurt anything. They just wouldn't be my top pick, but I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Please let me know, and I'll put a link to the reference photo I used as well in case you want to track that down and try this painting for yourself. I'm pretty sure you can do a better job than I just did at it, but it was fun nonetheless, and hey, that's what art is all about, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Until next time, happy crafting.